This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
All right, everybody. It's about that time. 1 p.m. on the nose, live on YouTube, getting ready for your afternoon podcast feed for the drive home after work. It's episode 2 of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with myself, Andrew Paterson, and Michael Remis. We've got a big show coming up today. Really excited for this one. Frank Seravalli, great friend of ours for many years back in our TSN days, is going to join us today. We'll talk Jets Leafs. Big game tonight, kicking off a 3-game set in Toronto, with the Jets taking on the North Division's #1 team. We'll get to the NHL trade deadline thoughts, Sutter and Calgary getting going this week, and much more with Frank. Frank will be up in about half an hour. And before then, the return of one of the most popular voices in 1290 history, our very good friend, Matt Leibl, who is going to join us, the sports rabbi himself. We'll talk Jets. I'm sure he's excited about the upcoming Blue Jays season. I know he'll have a hot take on Dak Prescott's contract extension with the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll have lots of fun with Matt Leibl coming up. Let's get right to it and bring in Michael Remis on the program. Remo? We got through yesterday's program. I take some responsibility for jinxing the technical prowess that we had going on, because anyone that was watching yesterday knew that I basically teed you up to talk about how, we're turning into internet guys, and you had, 25 seconds of great takes that were heard by nobody because the mic's on. First of all, test that thing. Is the mic on today?
Yeah, it appears to be on. And, that was, I'm getting known as now the guy who didn't have my mic on in the first show at the end. And I'm okay with that. You look at the, after a stream on YouTube, it shows you a graph of when everyone's chatting. The chats were pretty steady, the whole thing. And hi, everyone in chat. I see you in there. They're pretty steady. And then there was a massive spike near the end. And I can only think that's good for where we show up on the YouTube search results. So I think that's actually a good thing that my mic wasn't on. I spiked the chat, and now we're ranking higher when you search for stuff like Winnipeg Jets. So look, that was the first show. I had never done anything on YouTube, so I didn't even know how to go live. And here we are with a great show. And thank you, everyone in chat who's in there.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that was next level SEO strategy is what it was. And,
it was.
You definitely don't need to wait for Remo's mic not to work to fire something in the chat. I will say yesterday I was kind of solely focused on, making sure we were getting everything done properly. But we will definitely have some time to. We'll definitely have some more time to check out the chat. Was just overwhelmed with how many people popped in live on the program. And then, Reem, I know all night we were hearing people that for the first time loaded a podcast onto their phone and listened to it in their car. And I knew that, educating people would be a little bit of the challenge as we got going right off the bat. But so far, so good. A lot of new podcast listeners, a lot of people that, normally consumed us in a different way, joining us either on YouTube or in the afternoon ride after 3 p.m. when those podcasts are loaded. And we continue to grow. We've smashed 2,000 YouTube subs. I think we're approaching 2,500. The podcast numbers keep going up. I'm not sure whether we're still #1 in Canada, but I screenshotted that, so that all that counts. I mean, we'll always have that picture from yesterday when we debuted the program.
Yeah, I think we were #1 among sports podcasts, ahead of some really notable names who I have a lot of respect for. #1 in hockey podcasts in Canada. And also I think it was like 25 among all podcasts. According to chartable.com, we might have to look into how they calculate these things, because we hadn't even.
I'll tell you how they calculate it. They calculate it correctly. That's how they do it. That is the Bible, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. The one that has Winnipeg Sports Talk at #1, the Bible of the industry. We just look at that and then we move on and get down to business. Speaking of getting down to business, I know we're going to have Matt Leibl coming in. Let's get right to it. 3 in a row for the Jets going up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I was talking to Dustin Nielsen earlier today on the Lock Shop, and it's almost deja vu of a team that had been playing well, that had been winning some games, going up against the team that is right now the measuring stick in this division. It did not go well for Edmonton. They scored 1 goal in 3 games against Toronto. They got shut out by Jack Campbell. They got shut out by Hutch. And then they scored one measly goal against Freddie Anderson and got outscored 13-1 in the series. Certainly the Winnipeg Jets are going to be looking to avoid that. And as we'll talk with Matt and Frank a little later on, the one thing I think Jet fans can, feel optimistic about going into tonight's game is the fact that, coming off a regulation loss, the Winnipeg Jets are 6-0-1 and have played quite well. They have not got into any extended losing streaks. And, there's a lot of talk about 3-point games and getting to overtime. The Jets have done that well so far this year. But I know that after the stinker that happened in Montreal on Saturday night, this is going to be a team that is going to look to show themselves much better in a big challenge up against the Leafs.
Yeah, Hellbuck, we know he's very good after a loss. He got pulled on Saturday. I think this is just some, big strategy here by the Jets. Get blown out on Saturday. Get that internal motivation not to have it happen again. You're playing against the top team in your division in Toronto. So they're going to want to, put that bad taste out of their mouth. I'm expecting them to come fired up. They know it's going to be a tough test. So 3 great games here. We haven't seen the Jets play Toronto since the beginning of the season. We know Toronto is the pace leader for this division. They were the favorite coming in. The Jets were down there, maybe a bit more than we thought, but I think these teams are definitely comparable. And let's see. We've seen a lot of the Jets against Vancouver and Ottawa, Montreal more recently, but let's see them against the top team. How are they going to do? And I expect them to fare quite well, assuming it's not, a total stinker like Saturday, but we haven't had too many of those, so I have no reason to think
I don't think that'll be the case. I mean, you know what? I mean, if you want to talk about a stinker with the Jets against the Leafs, I mean, you have to go back to that first week of the season and the Jets' lone game in Toronto this season for, one of the more underwhelming performances of the year by the hockey club. And, going to Toronto, even without fans, I think for certainly the guys that are from that area, especially a guy like Mark Scheifele, it is a special game. I mean, they really do want to show well. And, there's a lot of players on the Winnipeg Jets, and we've heard them say before that, sometimes this team is overlooked. They don't maybe get the attention that others do, being in the smallest market in the league. Well, if you want to let people know that you're a good hockey club, you got a pretty good opportunity to do that going into Toronto to play against the team that has set the bar so far this season in the North Division.
Yeah, and I love when the Jets play against Toronto. I love how, the Leafs get all this media attention, and finally it seems like more people are realizing that the Jets are actually a very good hockey team. You see a lot of the tweets from, national media members talking about the Jets' talent, and then when the Jets beat Toronto, it's always from, the Toronto fans at hashtag TML Talk or wherever. How did we lose to the Jets or something like that? So I do get fired up against these games against Toronto. 3 coming up. I think it's exciting. I'm excited for the broadcast and the attention. They are big games. I mean, 2 of maybe 1 and 2 in the division. How is that? How they're going to finish? We'll have to wait and see. But definitely contenders for that North Division title. Sorry, Scotia North.
Well,
Scotia North.
Yeah,
got to make sure you get it.
We don't need to. We're not getting a check from Scotia. I'm not sure that that's too important that we refer to it as the Scotia North Division. I still like to call it the Canadian Division, to be honest with you. We can talk a lot, and we have, about what happened and what didn't happen for the Jets on Saturday night. What is interesting, Michael, is that the Leafs, after that dominant run against the Edmonton Oilers, had a couple hiccups of their own, finishing up the road trip in Vancouver, losing to the Canucks a couple times. And that killed us on the lock shop on Saturday night. The Leafs up 2-1 comfortably in the third period, and then it quickly changed. So, for all the piss and vinegar that the Jets will have coming into this game after what happened on Monday night, I'd imagine that the Toronto Maple Leafs and Sheldon Keefe are going to hope that, his team will be up for maybe a bigger challenge back at home. There's that old adage, the first game back off the road is sometimes a challenge. That'd be nice for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I guess the point is that as angry as the Jets are as to what happened on Saturday against Montreal, it's not like the Leafs are, the Leafs have had a couple rough games after playing very well. They'll definitely be focused on getting a good start to this 3-game series against the Jets.
Yeah, I think that game against Vancouver it was the end of the road trip. They had played against Edmonton. They had taken 3 in a row in dominating fashion. Maybe that's a bit of a letdown game. Maybe it's, that extra hour of time zone. It's because, you're the East. You're moving a couple time zones there. It's always you got to factor that time zone bump in. So the Leafs, I think they'll be home. They'll be rested. I'm expecting their A game, but there's been a couple games. I remember the first game this year between Edmonton and Toronto, we were expecting at least 8 combined goals, and there was no action. So I hope it's not that. I'm hoping for a lot of goals. Again, a lot of talent. Each team maybe has their issues on defense. With the Jets, we know they have solid goaltending, and against the last couple of games, Toronto's gotten solid goaltending too. Maybe not, they don't have a Vezina trophy in their trophy chest, but again, I'm very, very excited for what we're going to see here tonight.
Yeah, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, all in Toronto. Jets and Leafs, number 1 and number 2 teams in the division. That should be excellent. We'll be getting to that with Frank Seravalli and Matt Leibl coming up in just a couple minutes. Hey, lots of people in the chat right now. Thanks to everyone that's popping on. I got to give a special guest to our pal Rod Peterson. Rod checking out Hot Rod, of course, the Rod Peterson Show. Bit of a trailblazer in this internet game, our friend from one province to the west. So love to have Rod in on the show. And I can tell you, already talking to producer Clark. I'm going to be popping on their program at some point in the next little while. And we will definitely be having Hot Rod come in. Normally was looking forward to talking CFL with Rod, but I know he's involved in calling some of the WHL games. I've been checking in with the Ice as they get ready to play. So that's certainly something we'll be covering on Winnipeg Sports Talk coming up in future episodes as they get back with a 24-game abbreviated schedule in the dub. Of course, we can't do this without our sponsors. Big shout out to our friend at Not Autocorp, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza Winnipeg, and coolbet.com. And Not Autocorp, our first sponsor, signed on day number 1, Waverly and McGillivray. Why not get into the vehicle of your dreams at a great price with the Not team? And if you're thinking about maybe making a move, but you're in a lease, they've got an amazing consignment program to help you try and get retail for your car. Pop down and see Trevor and the gang at Waverly and McGillivray, or you can do that online at not.ca. And big thanks to our newest partners, and that is Nick and Nikki Hajdiakau in their DQ group. They've got Dairy Queen Northgate, Polo Park, DQ Niverville, and have just bought and taken over the DQ on St. Anne's. Got a note last night from one of our listeners that they were surprised that it was open. It's never usually open this early. Well, it's open now because Nick and Nikki have it. They've got the special grill there for the burgers. Obviously, the ice cream speaks for itself. And we might be getting, we're going to do an ice cream cake for a special birthday in the Remis household tomorrow. So we'll look forward to doing that. So big thanks to both Not Autocorp, Nicky. We'll get to Royal Sports Boston Pizza a little bit later on. And, of course, coolbet.com. And just a quick mention to many people that have contacted us about being involved in the program. We really appreciate it. We're definitely looking to expand that, as well as some of the offerings that we have here on winnipegsports.com. We'll be doing that in the future. Just kind of need a week or two to be able to get this show on the road. So, as I mentioned, coming up a little bit later on, Frank Seravalli, TSN Hockey Insider, and coming up in just a couple moments, we will have the one and only Matt Leibl, one of the most legendary voices in the history of TSN 1290. Don't forget tonight, of course, Paul Edmonds has the call over on CGOB. That will be beginning at 7 p.m. Hoping to get Paulie on the program sometime soon. We missed him when the rights went over across the street, and Paul's no longer there. Was no longer with us. But one of the things we're certainly looking forward to do the most is having a chat with Paul about what's happening with the Winnipeg Jets. We got some more pops in. Does the OHL have a return date? Asked because interested if Perfetti would have to go back. By the rules, yes. I mean, we're getting to a point, and certainly Ontario, we saw a big spike in the number of new COVID cases in the last couple of days. So I don't believe that there's any imminent plan that will be happening. And it was great to see the Moose, who, by the way, started a 17-game homestand yesterday at not the Bell MTS Place, but they're playing games at the Iceplex. And, we'll have to get the Fink on at some point soon. And certainly Dave Manouk, who does such a great job with Illegal Curve, to talk a little bit about what's happening for it. Adam Kusi and the CFL training camp will be one full month. They don't have any games on Canada Day or August long, as these holiday dates are going to be massive for people on vacation. I don't know about you. Listen, if there's a game, you could put a game on at Sunday morning at 8:30. I'll be there for it. I think so many fans, when the doors are opened and we are able to go, will be they will certainly be signing up. So just waiting to get Matt Leibl into the chat room. People asking where's Virtuity and Dr. J. Well, I'll tell you what, we may very well have them in at some point soon. And one other thing I should tell you, of course, we're getting tons of comments. If you can, please like the video as we like the video. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify afterwards, any options you can to rate and review certainly would be nice. Adam Kuzian, this is true. COVID literally is over within the U.S. The Tampa Bay Arena will be packed with fans tonight, raising the banner. It is pretty amazing to see the difference right now between what we have going on here in Winnipeg and in Canada as opposed to what's happening south of the border. And I think a big part of that is just vaccine availability. But it's coming in here. I know some of our parents and whatnot are getting ready to, begin to get vaccinated. And that is going to be the key for all of us if we want to get out and if we want to get into these buildings, support the Bombers, of course, the Jets. I don't think there's really any chance that we'll be bringing on or getting into the building at any point this season from a fan's perspective, but I'm certainly hoping that we'll be able to do that. Remo, how are we doing back there with getting the rabbi in here?
I think Leibl's audio only today. He's having some video issues. Leibl, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Excellent. The mysterious sports rabbi wanting to go audio only. And you know what? You look quite nice as well. I mean, I can see you, Matt.
Can you? Remis says he can't see me.
Oh yeah, no, I can see you.
Why can't I see you?
You look great. The beard is looking solid. The hair is tight. You got a nice collared shirt. I remember what it was like wearing collared shirts before the pandemic. I didn't do it very often, but now, never mind collared shirts. You could barely get me to look at a pair of jeans right now after a year in pretty much lockdown.
I wanted to say, though, I heard you are now in the Glasses Club, and I can see, and I think that you wear them well. Welcome to Vision.
Well, thank you. I had great eyes my whole life, and all of a sudden they just kind of went, and it was rapid, and all of a sudden I couldn't see very well. And yes, I'm a glasses guy now, despite being publicly glasses shamed online by Gary Lawless. Just the typical of Gary, take a shot like that at me. But yeah, no, I see you. You look great. And it's great to have you on the program. Before we get into everything, I know a lot of people would just be love to hear your voice again. How are things going? Congratulations. The growing Leibl family is now 4 with Felix, who's the new addition. So congratulations to you and Heather on that. How is dad life, rabbi life? And you're missing your old line of work, blabbing about sports with jokers like me?
Well, yeah, dad life is great. Like you mentioned, Felix was born. We talked about this a little bit because I got to be a guest with you back on the old station just before the Super Bowl, right? In the time leading up to the Super Bowl. So Felix was born on the same birthday as my first son, Hugo, right? So they have the same birthday of January 31st, which we talked about was a wild just coincidence. Heather, my wife, and I, everything went really well. She's doing great. Felix is doing great. Hugo likes having the younger brother. It seems hard to say for sure. But the best part was that I was able to, thanks to some great colleagues at the synagogue, take the month of February off. So I was able to go right into parental leave and really just 4.5 weeks of kind of quality family time at home and not having to think about all the things that were going on at the synagogue, which was really great. I got back to work last week and rabbi life is good. There's always things going on. There's always funerals and weddings and bar mitzvahs. And of course, we're dealing with the pandemic like everybody and everywhere.
I was going to say, how different is it? I mean, your services, you do all that stuff online, basically. I know there's been gathering sizes. Funerals, obviously challenging.
So funerals we always do at the cemetery graveside where we set up a camera, and our synagogue has had its doors closed to the public for a year now, but we've not skipped a beat. We have 2 services a day, and our big services are Friday night, Saturday morning for the Sabbath, what we call Shabbat. And I've told people that it felt, because I never had a camera in the studio, but it was just like going back to the radio days where I was in a room where you're in a room with maybe 1 or 2 other people, right? Like it would be you and maybe Remis or Kyle or Ryan, or Gary or whoever, and I was with Brandon, Troy, and you can't see your audience. So we know that we have this audience watching online. We have this whole audience, but we can't see them, and it's playing to a camera, playing to the internet. It was a lot like going back in time for me to when we were radio colleagues. So as for you asked if whether I miss things, I've been off. You know, you and all the crew from 1290 are always surprised when I remind people that it's been 4.5 years.
That's nuts, man. That is nuts.
Right. I was there for 6 years. Station lasted 10.5. I was there for the first 6, and then it's been 4.5 since I left. I've never really missed it. Part of it is because you've had me as a guest from time to time, so I get my fix. But I am really, really excited about what you and Michael Remis are doing here. I had this thought. I was thinking, you know, when we see, like, I watch Dan Patrick, I watch Colin Coward, Rich Eisen, anyone who used to work for ESPN, whenever they talk about ESPN, they talk about the mothership or the old place, right? Now we're in a position to have, like, stories about the old place, right? Like, we can do a little strolling down memory lane to 2010 and 2011 and just there's a decade of just really, really interesting things that happened when you know, at the mothership.
Well, you know what, Matt, when Gary was on yesterday, I said this, and I've been talking to Joel Marcoux a lot over the past, few weeks. He's a great dear friend of both of ours. And I honestly, I think that we might need to do the oral, like a podcast series, the oral history of TSN 1290 and just, interview just think of the characters that came through that building over the course of it. And it's not just within the building. Many of them are right now in the chat or listening to the podcast later on, because the people on the other side of the microphones, both in and outside the building, were just as big a part of everything. So no shortage of content on all of that. But listen, we could probably talk about the station the whole time. Let's get down to business right now. Jets, Leafs, 3-game series beginning tonight. Feeling about the Jets overall to this point in the season, where they're standing, and what are you expecting or hoping to see tonight and over the course of this next week in Hogtown?
Okay, so what was that? Is it Bill Parcells? Was it Bill Parcells who had the old line, "You are what your record is"?
Yes.
So the Jets' record is good, right?
I think anyone would take it right now. If you look at where they are, where they're standing, you got to be feeling pretty good.
But I have concerns. I've watched this team. I've watched pretty much every game, and I have concerns about the defense. I have concern. There have been games.
Very legitimate concerns, I might add.
Yeah, I've had concerns about their ability to make passes, to get out of their own zone, to get through the neutral zone. I don't like dump and chase hockey. I've never liked dump and chase hockey, particularly on a team with skilled guys like Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, who can carry the puck, Dubois. I have concerns, and I have this fear that their record, even though the old Parcells line plays, "You are what your record is," you're third in the division. I'm worried that their record is a bit of a mirage because they haven't played at Toronto yet, because they played a lot of games against Ottawa early. I think that the Toronto games, 3 in a row here against Toronto, it's the old litmus test. It's the old barometer. They're the best team, maybe in the NHL. They're certainly the best team in Canada. And it's not just about whether the Jets win or lose for me. It's how they look in these games. Because the first time they played Edmonton, I felt like every time McDavid was on the ice, the Jets were on their heels. Right. And they won a couple of those games, but there are concerns for me about their ability to hang with a team as talented and as fast and as skilled as the Leafs. And I can't help but shake the couple of games that they've lost in just epic, heartbreaking fashion. Seconds to go against Ottawa. Ottawa's got the puck behind their own net, 25 seconds to go. Next thing you know, the Jets lose. They don't even get a
listen,
point.
There's been a couple killers
Things
like that this year.
Yeah, killers.
I will say that, and it's so easy from a fan's perspective. Those just hurt. You can't believe that the point slipped away. And the thing about it is, from a Jets perspective, is that you kind of know that as long as this team gets to overtime, against just about anybody else. Edmonton with, Draisaitl and McDavid, and certainly the Leafs will have guys at 3-on-3 that, are super elite. But combining the goaltending the Jets have with those forwards, and I know a lot of people are on Maurice for a lot of things. Not many people too upset with the fact that he's gone to 3 forwards, and we've seen, they're 5-0 in OT right now. So I guess the point is you got to get to OT. The Jets will win more than their share of 50% of that extra point. So yeah, those things work. But for as bad as those ones feel, you look at the way they've bounced back, and this is why I'm so interested in tonight's game, Matt. This team is 6-0-1 after a regulation loss. They played some of their best games, stepping up after disappointing nights. And if you want to do a power poll of the Jets' losses this season, Saturday night in Montreal was a double flusher. So they've got a lot to come back from what we saw on Saturday. And I certainly hope and expect we'll see a much better Jet team. And the Leafs, for their part, coming off the road, it is the first game after the homestand. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to get going, but I can't imagine they're going to be in too good of a mood after blowing that Saturday night lead to Vancouver and losing their last 2 games after completely dominating the Oilers in 3 straight games in what was sort of the same situation we have tonight between the top 2 clubs going into the series between those 2 teams back in Edmonton about 10 or 12 days ago.
I think you point us about the resilience, because even I'm thinking of like the Edmonton game that was very back and forth, that I had shades of that first season Claude Noel Jets Flyers game that ended up going 9-8, where there was all that scoring, just and their ability to bounce back after a loss, regardless of how bad the loss is. I don't question the character of this team. I think that they really do. I think they really are that resilient group within games and from game to game. I just wonder about some of their limitations. I have a lot of friends who are vocal about head coach Paul Maurice. I've always been such
pro or con. Yeah.
Con.
There's not too many. The pro Maurice people aren't that vocal.
They're
the
not
negative
vocal.
ones,
The pros aren't vocal. The cons are vocal. I look at a guy who's got, sure, about as many losses as he has wins, but he's an all-time top 10 winning head coach. He's got decades of experience. I love the way he communicates with the media and the public through the media, which has always made me say he's a good communicator with the team. But I just wonder if there are some limitations. That's why I said you like what I said earlier. I want to see how they play against Toronto. Toronto's a well-oiled machine. If the Jets are a well-oiled machine, they're going to be able to keep up with Toronto. I mean, we know they have the skilled players. I think this year they actually have some of their best forward depth. I think defensively, well, I don't know if they're ever going to get, I shouldn't say that, but that 2018 crew, the defensive depth was absolutely unbelievable. I think it's going to take a while. I mean, they're a far cry from Buff. And
don't even start trying to compare the Jet blue line to that year's team.
The forward depth, the combination of elite skilled guys. I mean, even trading Laine, bringing in Dubois, being able to mix and match centers here. Guys can go to the wing. Guys like Kopp and Lowry in roles that are a little bit better, certainly better suited for them third roles. Matthew Perreault actually having a really good year in the role. Like, the forward depth is really, really good. I like all of their forwards. I like Trevor Lewis. I mean, I like to see a guy like Vesalainen get in there a little bit more often. I love a guy like Harkins. I love their forwards. I just wonder about everybody after Morrissey and Pionk. I just wonder about the defense. And there are just some games where, like, for the life of them, they can't make a pass. They can't make a pass. And then another team with speed like the Oilers, Leafs, or like the Habs, puts pressure on them in their own zone, and things get a little bit chaotic. That doesn't look like a championship team to me. That doesn't look like a team poised for a playoff run. So, and at the end of it, what do we always say? You're not going to be able to get rid of a lot of the players. You may, if you want to, have to make a decision, make a change with the coach. It kills me to say it, because Paul Maurice just seems like the perfect guy to have a beer with, to go out with. He just got so much knowledge, but maybe he isn't the right guy anymore. And I don't know.
Listen, if you're worried about the defense and their inability to make a pass, and I mean, is that on the coach, or is this a personnel issue that, the general manager has been trying to work on? And I know we're going to talk about some of the trade targets and some of the defensemen that are apparently out of the market, and we'll do that with Frank Seravalli coming up a little bit later on. And I guess the other question is about how the team is handling, some of these younger players. I mean, you can look in the chat. I mean, we certainly check out Twitter every day. We hear it all the time. I mean, people, they want Ville Heinola in the lineup right away. They want Dylan Samberg in the lineup right away. I mean, I will say this for sports fans. Patience is not a virtue that is commonplace amongst the average sports fan. And we're part of it too. I mean, we have Ray Ferraro on or Craig Button on and says Dylan Samberg is ready to play in the NHL right now. People hear that and, that resonates with them, Matt. So, I understand it, but I will say this. The culture of this team is one of a slow build. They've done it before with many of their players, and I think we're looking at some of the results that are coming through right now on a positive level with a guy like Mason Appleton, for instance. Even Kyle Connor, who went back to the American Hockey League, played that season, and then started the next year in it. Have come. So I'm not ruling out the fact that we could see Ville Heinola, maybe even Dylan Samberg toward the end of the season, probably not playing enough games to have the contract count, but I think be in the mix come playoff time if they're performing better than guys they have in the lineup right now. And of course, as we'll ask Frank in a couple minutes, when it comes to trade deadline targets, the Jets have got the number 2 center. That's what we talked about every single day for 2 months leading into the deadline the last few years. Now, of course, it's some help on the blue line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't say enough good things. I love that they have Stastny back. I always felt that, I was kind of watching the chat and some people were taking some shots at Chevy. I always felt that Chevy's biggest blunder that never really seemed to get talked about was the fact that they didn't keep Stastny for what amounted to be, I think, $1.5 million over 3 years. Like Stastny.
Here's the thing, though. This is Matt. It's important to point this out because we do hear this all the time, and it's the same thing with Mark Stone. Like, I don't mean to point this out. I'm a Winnipeg guy. I love this city more than anyone. But if you are offering $7 million and Vegas is offering $7 million and they just went to the cup and you were, at a certain point, it's not like all things being equal, people are going to pick Winnipeg. I mean, there's a lot going against the Jets when they're trying to sign guys like free agents. And I give them credit for circling back on that, getting him here and now being in a situation that he can really help. And listen, if he stays next year, his contract won't be in that same ballpark. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I don't know if it was I don't know, Huss. I thought it was in the end that Vegas sweetened the deal a little bit. I think the Jets could have had him. I mean, not that I was in the inside. I don't know. But I just love seeing him back on the team. Like you say, having him this year. I've got very high hopes for the team. And if the defense is a work in progress, that's okay. It's just how many more years is Blake Wheeler going to be at this level? I'm already starting to see Blake Wheeler. I don't know. Is he the same Blake Wheeler, the 90-point Blake Wheeler? I don't know.
I'll tell you what, he's been damn good the last couple of weeks. I mean, the start, he was obviously hurt. Everybody knew that, and he wasn't going to say. I mean, when he said, what was the question? They said, "Oh, are you hurt?" And he goes, "If I'm in the lineup, consider me 100%." I mean, it was sort of one of those saying, "Yeah, listen, I'm dealing with something. Work it out." Listen, Matty, this has been so much fun.
I love it.
I'm holding you to a semi-regular visit with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk when your duties allow you.
As long as Remis and I can figure out why you can see me, but the people can't. I had a shower today. I would have skipped the shower. I work from home. What am I having a shower for if I'm not going to be on video? It's all radio.
As I say, things on the desk of the CTO of Winnipeg Sports Talk are piling up by the episode, but it's all good, man. Thanks so much for doing this. Great to have you on the program, and we'll do this again real soon.
All the best to you and Remis. What you guys are doing right here, I hope your audience realize, I think a lot of them do. This is what it feels like to be at the beginning of something very special. It took a lot of courage, a lot of smarts. You guys are out there. I give you tremendous kudos. We have this expression in the synagogue world. We say in Hebrew, the word is we say Yasher Koach, which is a hard thing to say, but what it translates to is more power to you. So I wish you guys from the Sports Rabbi making his first, hopefully of many appearances on your program and on your station. Yasher Koach, more power to you. Thank you from all the sports fans in Winnipeg for having a place, if nothing else, to vent and to listen and to just share our enthusiasm for sports. Thank you, boys, for doing this for all of us.
Matt, you're the best. Thanks for doing this. We got, and I'll just send you off with a nice bit from the chat. Here's our pal Tyson Ducharme. Hey, Matt. Man, I miss these bad takes. Matt, you're a pro. So there you go. Give you a good one on the way out.
I remember him from the Twitter days. Man, do I not miss Twitter?
Oh, we miss you on Twitter. I'll tell you that. Hey, pal, thanks again for doing this. We'll get you back on real soon.
See ya. Thanks.
All right, there he is, Matt Leibl joining us. What a beauty he is, and can't wait to chop it up with him more in the future. All right, well, we're going to get ready to bring in Frank Seravalli coming up in just a moment. Gives me a quick time to plug our OG sponsors, Royal Sports. Greg and Gerald Hasbeek have been supporting what we've been doing for over 15 years. Royal Sports, it is the Winnipeg Sports Superstore, 750 Pembina Highway and 650 Raleigh and EK. Of course, hockey is back. We're getting rinks open. Kids are getting back on the ice. If you need equipment, I mean, it really is your one-stop hockey superstore in the city. And with spring just around the corner, bikes, soccer, baseball, it's all there, as well as one of the best selection of licensed merchandise anywhere around in Winnipeg. Pop by Royal Sports and tell them your boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And of course, our friends at Boston Pizza Winnipeg. I'm still looking at these the Vizzy. I'm going to try one of these. Oh, it's not popping up on my green screen, but oh, there it is. The new hard seltzer from our friends at Molson. Those are going to be available at Boston Pizza right away. Game day meal might be a good thought for the game tonight. Pizza, maybe a couple dozen wings. You can do that all online, ordering at Boston Pizza. Or the lounges are different with COVID right now, but you certainly can get into the spot, big screen, big sound. Watched the game last Monday at BP Taylor. Had a great time. It sure was great to be back. Let's try and get Frank Seravalli coming in. Remo, how are we doing?
I don't know what's going on, Huss, but Frank's video is not working. Would you want to take like a 3-minute intermission to restart Skype and try to get Frank's video, or do you want to just bring him in?
You know what? Let's just bring him in. Let's just bring him in on chat. So many people will be watching on although Frank does look amazing today. It's
I like Frank's studio.
To the people of YouTube. A crime to the people of YouTube that we won't have him on. But Frank's ready to go, and we've got lots to talk about him. So let's do it that way.
Okay, here. Frank, unmute your mic, and we'll bring you in here.
All right. What a great way to continue our episode 2 of Winnipeg Sports Talk and bringing back our good friend, NHL insider with TSN, Frank Seravalli. Frank, what's good? Great to have you on the program. Thanks for doing this.
Huss, good to be back. Remis, good to connect with you guys. Really glad that you have this up and running. I was waiting for someone to do it, give Winnipeg sports fans the platform that they deserve, and really glad that it's you guys.
Well, it's a pleasure. I mean, we've had such amazing support from people that were sort of, and we heard it every day. This is such an amazing sports city, and I was
going to say, this is of zero shock to me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But, we obviously developed a great connection with a lot of the people here and our listeners for a long time. But the bottom line was that you can't just listen, a company, they can do what they want, but you don't just end sports talk by walking away. All you do is leave a huge void, and the fans are still here. The passion for the teams are still here. We still want to do it. So we are doing it, and the response has been amazing, and it really is. It's an exciting time for all of us. It's been a brutal, actually, I guess it's a month ago today that all happened. So we're talking 4 weeks later. We're blowing away our expectations with numbers, and we're apparently getting it on the air and getting into people's podcast feeds. So that's what it's all about. Speaking of
and all of that, and you spared the YouTube visitors a chance to see me today, which they are the luckiest viewers to date.
You've got a good setup there, dude. You got a very good setup, and of course, you do so many things on TSN television, which we're going from the lab. But just quickly plug what you're doing with Gregor now with Daily Face-Off, another great addition to the content that so many hockey fans are looking for. Rebo, just if you're hearing, I think some people in the chat are saying we're having a tough time with sound. So hopefully we'll got that. We'll continue and record it and get it up for the podcast either way. Back here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Frank, let's get to this Jets-Leafs game tonight. The Leafs have been the class of the North Division so far this year through, well, about half the season. We saw what happened when they went up in that big 1-2 matchup against the Oilers a couple weeks ago. It did not go well for Edmonton. What do you make of the Jets coming into Toronto and a chance to get after it with the top team in the league?
This is the classic measuring stick. I mean, to this point, no one has proven a worthy challenger of the Maple Leafs. We thought the Habs were in that world, if not maybe a step above them to start the season, and they've fallen off. The Edmonton Oilers came in with a 3-game home series, a chance if they swept to take over first place in the North based on points percentage, and they didn't take care of business, getting swept in their own right. And now the Winnipeg Jets are the next challenger against the heavyweight champ. And they've got a real opportunity here to make a statement, and not just about this team and how well they've played and how well they've scored, doing something that, really, I think the Jets have 3 things that the Maple Leafs don't. One is 4-point per game scorers. The Toronto Maple Leafs don't have that. The other is, at this point, they're the only team in the North and one of only 2 teams in the league that hasn't lost back-to-back in regulation, which, by the way, the Maple Leafs did for the first time this past weekend. And the third thing is Connor Hellebuck. And there's been so much talk about, can this Jets team sustain what they've been able to do? And my answer on most teams would be no. If you look at the defensive numbers and the metrics, and you'd say, well, probably not. But on a team with Connor Hellebuck and a team that scores this way, why not? So they've got a lot going for them. They're a team that I saw as right on that playoff bubble that's exceeded expectations. And now you have a chance to find out where you fit with the team that has blown everyone else away to this point.
Now, Frank, speaking of that, and I wanted to ask you a couple other things about the North Division, but we know that the Jets have, issues on the blue line. We've been talking about a second line center, finishing out that top 6 for the last couple of years in Winnipeg. And, a trade we'll be talking about for decades. Patrick Laine and Roslovic going to Columbus, brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois. As far as the blue line goes, I know you've talked a lot about potential trade deadline targets. We've got Mattias Ekholm in Nashville at the top of the list. Thoughts on the Jets blue line and how aggressive they might be going into the deadline, considering where they are right now and everything you've just said about this club? What might be possible if they did shore up the, that top pairing in the top 4?
Yeah, I could think of no better trade deadline target for the Winnipeg Jets than David Savard of the Columbus Blue Jackets, number 2 on our TSN trade bait board. The question is, are the Jets willing to pay that kind of price? And I don't know what the going rate is. The Blue Jackets are actually still kind of in that mix in the Central Division, and we'll have a really much better idea in the next 2 weeks as to exactly where they stand, whether they get their act together or not. But he would be tailor-made for this Jets team. Not only is he the playoff performer that you need, his minutes go up every year in the playoffs. He's a big bruising guy that plays a legit shutdown role. He's like the one defenseman that actually lives up to the term defenseman. He guards and plays as well in his own end as anyone. And I think that's really what the Jets are missing. They've got bits and pieces of that in Josh Morrissey, of course. They could use another presence, and Savard would certainly be that. He's sort of like the stop valve, the escape valve that can cut off a cycle or a flow in your own end, which at times I feel like the Jets have had trouble breaking up. And so I think he'd be a perfect fit as a rental. Now, the question is, if the Jets were going to pull the trigger, would they be reasonably sure that they could re-sign a guy like that? And then the next question is, what does the market look like for a guy like Savard in the offseason? Is he closer to the $4 million range? Is he more than that? What kind of term is he looking at now on the wrong side of 30? So lots of questions. But if I were to pluck one guy off the list, that would be the guy I'd be most excited to get to plug into a team that has all the other issues or question marks really answered and solved.
Well, you know what? Frank Seravalli with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I have to ask you about something you just mentioned. A guy like David Savard that's a free agent next year. What will the money be like? We saw what happened in this short abbreviated offseason. How many players that normally would be getting a much larger check? It simply wasn't there. We saw a number of guys sign 1-year deals. As we creep closer to coming out of the pandemic, how do you see just the free agent market in general in the National Hockey League next year? How different is it going to be from 24 months ago? And at what point do we even get close for these guys that are free agents to kind of what they remembered and what they would have been expecting when they got to the open market?
A long way off. I mean, you mentioned we're talking about potentially coming out of the pandemic, even though it feels like we're still not even really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're not going to see that in terms of hockey paydays for a long time, because even though the rest of the world may be coming back to normal, what we're dealing with in the hockey world is a flat salary cap. And it all depends on next year's revenue projections in terms of how quickly the players, without getting into the really nerdy stuff, is how quickly the players can pay back this $1 billion plus loan to the NHL's owners before they can start to see the cap rise. And until that's paid off, the cap is going to remain the same. And the problem is next year, if this vaccine rollout continues to be slow in Canada, I know what the numbers say. The Trudeau camp is promising that mass vaccinations are coming and can't come soon enough. But if the NHL has to start next season with empty buildings or limited capacity buildings in Canada, that's going to be a major revenue suck on the league. And the problem with that is, with the salary cap remaining the same at 81.5, the players are going to be paid out the same amount of money again next year, where it's still not hitting the 50-50 split in revenue. So instead of actually paying down that debt that they owe to owners, if this makes any sense, instead they're actually going to be increasing their loan amount that's due to owners. So it's really critical for revenue to bounce back, just from an owner's and player's perspective, because that's the sooner that can happen is the sooner players can start to get paid again like they normally would expect. And until then, it's going to be more pain for these guys that we're expecting once in their career paydays that they may not get it.
How much of a burden will this eventually be on, the rookie class, for instance, of this year? I mean, the Alexis Lafrenières that are coming in right now. I mean, how affected will they be down the road? Do you think, or will it really be pretty much everyone that feels the brunt of it for a little while?
No, I think the players that are going to feel the brunt of it are the middle class. The Alexis Lafrenières are always going to get paid, provided that they produce. And he's off to one of the worst starts of number 1 overall pick in league history. So he's really struggled at times with the Rangers. And I think everyone's hoping that he finds his game soon. Big adjustment from not having played in a long time to then also having to play in the NHL against men. You see Tim Stützle, you mentioned the draft class, just the transition he's made. He already played with men in Europe previously, and he played in the World Juniors. So he got a little bit of a launching pad. But money-wise, is it going to affect them? Maybe a little, but those top players are always going to get paid. The bottom rung players, the fourth line guys that are league minimum, they're always kind of going to continue to remain in that same range. It's the middle class guys. Think of a Matthew Perreault, never really a star. Was trying to, he feels like forever. He was trying to carve out his exact path and role in Winnipeg, but he got a pretty nice ticket at $4+ million. And so those are the types of players that aren't going to see that type of money anymore moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, and we've already seen it. Well, and the Leafs are a perfect example that we'll see tonight, Frank, in that, they've got huge top-end salaries. But when you can get the likes of Jason Spezza to come in at $700,000 a year and, contribute lower down in your lineup, you get a little closer to making it work. I think we'll see far more players in Jason Spezza's situation, at least in the next couple seasons here in the National Hockey League.
That and also, like, what happens to some of the other players that are in that sort of ballpark that I was talking about, the middle class? What about a Zach Hyman, for instance? He's a pending unrestricted free agent, a huge critical piece in terms of being a cog in that wheel for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What is he worth? some people argue that the job that he does in facilitating and getting pucks and grinding things out as a quote press player in the league is, there would be some people that would think he's $5+ $6 million a year and could get to that number. Does he do that in a pandemic? And we know that at that number, the Maple Leafs can't afford to keep him. So, I think and I got to this the other day a little bit, again, we were just talking about platforms and the ability to talk about things in detail. I tried to explain this in a minute-long hit on TSN, but just the idea of cycles that teams are in. And I'm really curious which way the Jets are going here, because you look at the cycle the Toronto Maple Leafs are in. They've built to this point. They've been building for years. They add Tavares. Now this is a critical juncture because they've got Hyman as a pending UFA and Anderson as a pending UFA. You saw what the Canucks are going through. They're trying to turn things over again after losing their free agents that they couldn't afford, but they've got the pillars in place with your Demko in net and Hughes on the back end, Paterson and Horvat up front. Now the Jets got to that point in their window in 2018 where they went on their run. Then you see their defense start to reshape a little bit last year. The unexpected change with Byfuglien. You say goodbye to Sherratt and Trouba. And by the way, they could really use an exact clone of Sherratt at this point. Like, how perfect would a guy like him have been on this team? So then where do they stand moving forward? You've got the Habs who pressed in the offseason because they saw an opportunity coming out of the bubble. They needed to make some hay. You know where the Sens are. They're on a complete straight path up and forward. But where are the Jets in that mix? In terms of, ability to spend, how much do you want to go for things at this deadline? These are all questions that need to be asked, and I think we'll find out in relatively short order. But those are questions that I'm curious about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people around here as well. And when you look, I think you basically have to start with the contracts of the top players. And when you've got Scheifele and Ehlers and Hellebuck and Wheeler, Dubois for 2 years, but they'll figure that out afterwards. I mean, you've got that kind of window right now with those players. I think it maybe makes it more likely that they might be aggressive when it comes to a player like Ekholm. A reasonable contract, 1 more year of term after this. Are we talking a first-round pick and a prospect, or just because of how many teams will be in on that, Frank?
I think so. First-round pick and prospect for 2 reasons. One is that extra year term that you mentioned, and 2 is the cap hit. It's pretty manageable. Almost every team can afford that. And if not straight up, then either by offloading a contract back in return. So I think that's where the premium comes in, and that's why Ekholm is the number 1 player on our board. But, it's so interesting because of those affordability reasons and the number of teams that believe that they could be in the mix in this odd year, that there probably would be a significant amount of interest. And I'll throw this at you, and I was thinking about writing it tomorrow on tsn.ca, is the idea of usually the first team in on the trade market gets a good deal. And it almost seems like this year there's a little bit of a premium that would need to be paid in order to be the first team to do it. And I say that because everyone wants to jump on it with the quarantine regulations and things in place that make it extra difficult to trade. Everyone wants to get these pieces in theoretically as soon as they can. Is the cost prohibitive at this point where teams are saying, okay, you want this guy now, make it 2 first. And you're like, well, hold on a second. Like, that's not going to happen. And you got to figure things out. So I think, in addition to all the other reasons, strange year, cap situation, 16 teams or 17 teams in LTIR, the fact that, you want to get this done and be the first to dive into the pool makes it even a little bit more challenging.
No, I think from a seller's perspective, I think you're bang on. If I'm Nashville right now, realizing the demand for a player like this, the urgency to do it earlier as opposed to waiting till the deadline and building up the offers, I think it's very right. And what will be interesting is you and the guys work on Trade Center and the deadline day, Frank, is that, there will be, a number of players that will be available. There'll be a limited amount of teams that are even in a position to go and add. And, you might actually see the bottom drop out of the market as you get closer to 2:00 on deadline day. Just, not because the players couldn't help teams, but because of both cap situation and, where teams are with quarantine and all that combining to maybe have a bit of a reverse urgency on the deadline, as you mentioned.
I think that's possible. And I think the other part of it is it seems to be a really thin class. I think there's also a hesitancy to pay for rentals. I'm really interested to see what a guy like Granlund gets back or a Savard gets back, because I think teams are placing a premium, especially on a really reasonable contract and cap hit, to get a guy, take a page out of the Julien Brisebois playbook from last year and get a guy like a Coleman or moving forward, someone that has a year left on their deal that they know is going to be around, rather than trading two second-round picks for a Tyler Toffoli that ends up walking in the summer. And it's a pretty significant cost that you've paid for your franchise over the next number of years.
Hey, as far as the North Division goes, and we kind of touched on, the Jets and Leafs, I'm interested in your perspective on the Habs and Flames, who have just made coaching changes in the past couple weeks, and the Vancouver Canucks and where they sit right now after that miserable start. They got a couple big wins against the Maple Leafs, so I think give their fans hope. But that whole situation with Jim Benning is very interesting, going into some uncertainty for Vancouver as to where they go and who will be guiding the ship, not just about the deadline, but also into next season.
I don't have any uncertainty on that front, at least from the people that I've talked to in Vancouver. Look, it's an interesting market. It seems to be more, and this is not a shot at anyone that lives there or is a Canucks fan, it seems to be more reactionary than any market. And it says a lot when you throw in Toronto to the mix. They seem to have had the pitchforks at the ready. And I don't know that I necessarily understand it, because this was going to be a transition year, as successful as last year was. And you think to the bright future and them going deeper than any Canadian team. And you're saying, but look at the guys that they've peeled off of their roster. Chris Tanev, Jacob Markstrom, Tyler Toffoli, like go down the list. Like how is this team supposed to be in the same spot that they were last year? It was unrealistic expectations in my opinion. This was a year that they were supposed to transition and have some of their young players take a bigger step. And I think they were hoping that some of the guys on their blue line would make it a more seamless transition. It hasn't been. Their goaltending also hasn't been up to par. So they've got some work to do, but the nice thing is they've got some cap space finally for the first time this summer. This goes back to the cycle that I was talking about. Sometimes you have to take it, between the eyes for a year or two to get to a position where you really want to be in. And if you're a manager and you're building and you're looking at your big board in your office, you know what the rest of the teams in your group are doing. And it feels like for whatever reason, all of that's been amplified. Paul Maurice, has talked about this, saying, what was his prediction before the year? 5 head coaches will be changed in this division. Like, I know we've got some ways to go to get there, but I thought this would be a record year for job security in the NHL, because it's a shortened year, because teams aren't going to want to pay these coaches, pay 2 guys at the same time. And maybe Paul's right.
I'm with you. I was stunned that, Montreal moved on Julien, and we heard the whispers about, Calgary and what was happening.
That one I wasn't surprised on.
What about hiring Sutter, though? And just thoughts on this team right now. They could not be more inconsistent. Ton of great talent. They've got their goalie back. What does Daryl Sutter's arrival do for the Calgary Flames in the short term and this season?
I think, the buzzword in Calgary, Huss, has been accountability. And I think he provides that right away. That's a team that, for whatever reason, just hasn't looked right this year. And that's another team that I think on paper, the expectations were so high with the way that they played, and they've sort of been building to this moment again with this core, speaking of the cycle again, that they were kind of placing a big bet on this year with the players that they brought in and all the money that Brad Treliving spent. My issue and the reason why I'm not surprised is that Jeff Ward never seemed like the guy to me. And that's, that goes back to sort of the adventure that Brad Treliving went on in the summer following the bubble. Is you had an opportunity to make a very quick statement. Jeff Ward is our coach. He's our guy. And we're signing him to an extension. We're removing the interim tag. Instead, the process seemed to go on forever. And maybe I'm exaggerating, but it went on a while. And then they get through all of that and they give Jeff Ward a 2-year deal. And I'm thinking, 2-year deal? Like what? Like there never seemed to exude that confidence in the coach. And I don't know if that affected Jeff Ward or if he just never had the voice in that room to begin with. But when some of the smoke signals that started coming out of that room, you know, I am surprised a little bit in the replacement, but then I'm thinking to myself as well, like, I got to tell you, it was 12:45 in the morning, Huss. I'm sitting at my desk in my office upstairs, and it was the reason I was still working. It was the night that the Gretzky family released that Walter Gretzky had died, and I get a call, and the Flames were saying, you know, hey, we just got a message. Jeff Ward has been fired. And they go, do you want to guess on the replacement? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know. Like, I was like, Mike Babcock. Like, I didn't know who to say. Like, who's on the market that you felt could really come in and make that impact? And Daryl Sutter's got that voice, that commanding presence, and he's a winner. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's in your backyard. He knows your franchise. There's a lot of caricatures about, you know, Daryl Sutter, the Jolly Rancher, you know, bitter beer face, whatever you want to call it. I mean, underestimate him at your own peril. That's what I would say.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, the Flames, I think they've seen the blueprint, and they want to do exactly what the Kings did in December of 2011 when they had a lot high hopes, some expectations that they'd become a playoff team. They were struggling. They make the move. They bring in Daryl Sutter, and 6 months later, as an 8th seed, they're hoisting the Stanley Cup. So we certainly have seen it happen before. South of the border, Frank, I'm interested. You mentioned, you know, smoke coming from the problem areas. In Buffalo, it's thick black smoke, and it's growing by the day.
Dumpster fire that's going there?
Exactly. What's going on with the Sabres right now, and in particular, Jack Eichel, who you know, is a superstar in this league, but you know, must be really, his patience must be wearing thin, and it doesn't seem like anything is happening right now that would build anybody's confidence looking into the future.
I feel like I need to put a helmet on just to answer that question. Like, it's I don't even know where to start. Like, it's a mess of epic proportions, and to think that they can find a way to work their way out of this, like, where do you start? I mean, a lot of people have, you know, trade Jack Eichel, or Jack Eichel wants out, and that's fine. I mean, how do you accomplish that in season? It seems almost impossible to me. He's not on our trade bait board for that reason. You know, I just think you remove so many teams from the equation that could be part of it, unless someone comes in and knocks your door down and demands that they get Jack Eichel between now and April 12th. But with that cap hit, it's going to be really difficult to do. You've got the Skinner deal, which is a disaster. I saw on Twitter, you know, if they trade Jack Eichel, can Jeff Skinner go with him? Like, that's all well and good. Who the heck's who can afford $19 million in salary cap hits?
Absolutely no one.
Less than no one. Like, so then you go, okay, well, what are we going to build around? Is it Rasmus Dahlin? I guess. I mean, he hasn't really proven himself to be a star at this point. I'm hesitant to evaluate anyone on Buffalo because it's been such a disaster. Is there a Buffalo stink effect that has wrapped around some of these players in their careers? Rasmus Ristolainen, Sam Reinhart. Like, I mean, where is it that you're going to put your stake in the ground and say, this is what we're going to build around? And how many teams are going to come in and try and pick at the carcass? And that has said nothing at all of Ralph Kruger and the job that he's done this year, which is not a very good one. And their GM and Kevin Adams, who has exactly zero experience running a team. I mean, honestly, I'm telling you, I don't know where to start, Huss.
Yeah, I mean, in your mind, Frank, to get Eichel out of Buffalo, I mean, what sort of a package are we talking about? Because there's not very many Jack Eichels in the league, period, and they sure as hell aren't many on the trade market.
No, I don't know, Ike. Again, what deal makes sense for your team? Like, do you want pieces that you can use now? Is it entirely futures? Like, are we talking 3 first-round picks? I don't know. Like, I'm just throwing something out there. Like, what begins to get you excited if you're Kevin Adams, if you're even Kevin Adams that's running Buffalo in the offseason? So I truly don't know where to begin on what a return would look like. You know, everyone keeps mentioning the New York Rangers, and I guess it's the Massachusetts connection that exists in that front office Jeff Gorton at GM and Quinn at head coach. I don't know. There's so few teams that can fit that contract that I think that's where you need to start. And how many teams are going to move heaven and earth if they can't in order to make it work with Jack Eichel? And then maybe this is an unfair question to ask because I know he's a great player. And I mentioned the Buffalo stink. How good is he? He hasn't exactly lived up to the $10 million cap hit or contract that he has. So what if he were to go somewhere else where he's engaged and on a team that wins and he's surrounded by talent properly? What is the ceiling for Jack Eichel? I don't even know how to answer that.
Well, I mean, from a general manager's perspective in Buffalo, I mean, it's such a difficult thing to pull off because, I mean, you're not trading Eichel for a bunch of pieces to win now, obviously. I mean, this season's done, and even the near future doesn't look that bright. And if you go to a bunch of things for futures, I mean, Frank, they're in year 12 of a 5-year plan to get back to respectability, and look where they are.
Yeah, I mean, and like speaking of a 5-year plan, like look at where the Toronto Maple Leafs are. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's two very different ways to go about it, and unfortunately for the Buffalo Sabres, they just didn't win the right lottery.
Frank Seravalli is with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. One other team I wanted to touch on with you, because for most of us here, it sort of has seemed like the National Hockey League is a 7-team league. We've got great Canadian matchups. Everyone's focused on their teams, the head-to-head matchups, the standings.
No wonder there's coaches being fired.
Yeah, exactly. But for guys from the Central Division that have seen a lot of the Chicago Blackhawks at the top of the mountain sort of, fade out of being a playoff team, I'm not sure there's a better story this year in the league than what is happening with that club. No Jonathan Toews. The injury to Kirby Dach going into the season at the World Juniors was devastating. And yet there's Pat Kane putting a team on his back, some new young players getting an opportunity to come in and do it. I mean, and they have been very quietly, for folks, if you've just been paying attention to the Canadian division, one of the great stories this year. Thoughts on the Hawks, how they've been doing it, and I know a lot of the MVP talk has been centered around Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews, but do you think Pat Kane should be a central figure in that storyline going forward?
I'll give you a little preview. I'm posting my mid-season award winners on Friday, and Patrick Kane at this point, I don't see anyone else that's above him in terms of the Hart Trophy race.
I agree.
What he's done with not just the players that they're missing, but just how special he's been on a night in and night out basis, consistently producing points. This isn't just one amazing 2-week run that he's been on. Showtime has been exactly that. He's been appointment television. And I think for this team with so many unknowns, Kevin Lankinen, like raise your hand if you heard of Kevin Lankinen before the season. Malcolm Subban has done excellent when he's been in net. Jeremy Colleton, a guy we're wondering, can this guy coach in the league? Is he going to be around for a long time? Everything's clicked in a very odd year, and also a team that, has had some COVID issues too. They've had some players go down and miss some time. So full marks to them. Patrick Kane is just, and I say this with all due respect to Mike Modano, Brett Hull, he is the best American-born player of all time until proven otherwise. And 1,000 games tonight. It's pretty special.
Well, and they're doing it without arguably the best, Winnipeg product ever in NHL history, and Jonathan Toews. I know, when it comes to personal and health issues, things are tight. But is there anything optimistic you're hearing about Jonathan Toews? Certainly, there's a lot of fans of his work here in his hometown.
Yeah, no kidding. I think everyone who's a hockey fan is a fan of Jonathan Toews, not just the player he is, but the class person that he is. I don't have any update. This is one story, Huss. There's a few things that I really try and respect privacy on. One is any sort of death in the family. You never want to be first to break that news. And two is a personal medical issue. And that's what it seems to be with Jonathan Toews. So I haven't attempted to get any dirt. There were all sorts of rumors and innuendo about Jonathan Toews. And is this something more serious? To my knowledge, I haven't come across any of that. So here's hoping that he gets back on his skates and is back on the ice sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you know what? As I said, people in Chicago pulling for him, but a lot of people here in Winnipeg as well. Frank, I always love talking to you on the air, off the air, bumping into you at the rink. Things are different right now. There's been a lot of changes in a lot of our lives, but I'll tell you what, it never gets old, chopping it up, talking hockey with you. Thanks so much for doing this. It was really fun to have you on the program.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for thinking of me so early in the show. Really glad to be part of it. And hey, you deserve a little credit too for getting back on your feet from what you've been through. It's been a tough year for a lot of people, and you were certainly on the list of people that we were thinking about. So glad to have you back. And Remo, I'm sure you'll figure this out at some point, getting my beautiful mug back on here, and can't wait to be back with you guys.
Hey, Frank, you're the best. Thanks for doing this, and we'll look forward to all your great coverage on TSN, of course, at tsn.ca. When you get that trade bait board going, we got the season awards coming up later on this week. Thanks for doing this. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
Good stuff. There is Frank Seravalli, TSN Senior reporter, joining us. And, Frank is just such a great guy. A guy that I've got to know quite well over the years. And it was just a lot of fun. The beauty of being able to bring a guy like Frank on and being able to talk for 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Geez, we went quite long. But, that's just the glory. If a guy like Frank has that sort of time for us, we are definitely going to use it because we know a lot of people are on. Now, I mentioned in that chat with Frank about Jonathan Toews. Could be the best Winnipeg product ever in the National Hockey League. And, we know what he's done. Certainly World Junior-wise, superstar in the league, the 3 cups. And I did see somebody mention Terry Sawchuk, who up until Martin Brodeur and Patrick Roy broke the records was, the shutout king of all time in the National Hockey League, and has an incredible story as well. I would be very interested to know in the comments who, in your opinion, is the best Winnipeg product in NHL history. There's no right answers, but I think a lot of people have opinions on that. So certainly would love to get that out. Well, anyways, we really appreciate Frank joining us. Always great to have him on the program. Let's check back in with Mission Control and Michael Remis. Remo, you're there. Can we get you back in? How are things going? We're 0 for 2 on video today. We did have a sound lapse at one point, but the content from the guys was good.
Great. First of all, great conversation with Matthew and Frank. Matthew, the sports rabbi, and Frank. By
the way, can the chat please confirm that Remis's mic is on?
Yeah,
that would be excellent.
It's confirmed. I can confirm it.
Okay,
I know exactly what what some of these issues are. The video one is something I'll have to deal with and do some troubleshooting on. That was a weird one, but the audio is what's important. We know we get a lot of downloads on Spotify, and I know people have it open on YouTube and are just listening. So big thank you to everyone in chat. And if you are in chat, make sure you're hitting the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing. We're closing in on 2,500 subscribers, and we haven't even been live for a week, which is absolutely incredible. We're absolutely floored. This has been quite a ride, and it's really just beginning.
Certainly. Getting some great people in chats on what we're talking about. Terry Sawchuk and Bill Mosienko. End of story. Adam's certainly going old school. I'll say this, and I know, there always is something that is real on recency bias. But you look at Toews' career and what he's done since he's to the league, the winning that he's done, the Conn Smythes. There certainly is something to be said. Ab McDonald, we certainly love Ab, and he's a historical figure in Winnipeg hockey history, without a doubt, as the first captain ever of the Winnipeg Jets, and was on some pretty damn good teams as well. I don't know that we can have on Ab, in that conversation, but and who knows? Maybe we've got some young Winnipeggers that are looking for great careers coming in the draft. Speaking of that, Carson Lambos, Winnipeg Ice, and the Ice getting back to work this week in the bubble in Regina. What a year to be a top NHL prospect. It really is absolutely, you just feel for all the kids that haven't played, but you wonder how a year like this will affect those that are going in. And Darren Drager reporting today that it doesn't look like there's going to be any change on the NHL draft. There was certainly a number of people within NHL organizations that wanted to see that date moved months down the road, potentially combining drafts later on. But the logistics of it all just seem to be too tough, not to mention NHLPA issues, that if players don't get drafted when they normally would and are drafted in October or November of next year, Oh, how does that affect contract years of service and all that? So sounds like we're going to have a draft, at the end of the season as we normally would. Although, man, what an absolute challenge for the scouts to get those draft boards ready with so little hockey in so many of the leagues. Before we get out of here today, let's get to our lines in the National Hockey League tonight for CoolBet and CoolBet Canada. You can go to the site at coolbet.com if you want to get in on it, especially before the players. We will talk some golf tomorrow on the program, I'm hoping. I started betting at CoolBet about a year and a half ago because I just found the golf odds were so much better, and I love throwing a few sprinkles down on the tournaments before we get in. But I found that, it's a one-stop shop. And in the National Hockey League tonight, we got a big slate of games. But if you do want to get in CoolBet, use the promo code WST, and you get a free 100% bonus on your deposit up to $200. So, yeah, promo code WST at coolbet.com. Rima, I don't know if you want to jump back in here to talk about these games tonight. We will have to get to the line of the day. I talked about this on the Lock Shop earlier with Dusty today. Jets and Leafs. Jets had opened at plus 145. Not surprising, a public team like the Leafs going down a little bit. Jets at plus 152 tonight, Reem, going into the game. The home team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, minus 182 on the money line. So a pretty significant favorite. Maybe some value on the Jets. They have not lost consecutive games in regulation. They'll be ready to erase the stench of Saturday night. I'm looking forward to this game. And, for the first time since the Jets came off the suspended list at the end of February on the Lock Shop, I think they're going to get a little bit of my hard-earned cash tonight.
Yeah, I just think the teams are closer than the books have said it. And we said that, coming into the season where the Leafs were such a heavy favorite in the North Division. And we're saying that now that they're head-to-head. I mean, minus 180, that's a significant favorite. I think the teams are a lot closer. So, and just in terms of a value, I would agree there's value on the Jets. And just on CoolBet, very easy to deposit on there, which I'm a fan of, especially for us in Canada. If you're looking at other odds, Nikolai Ehlers to score tonight, playing 3.3 to 1. I like, I'm a fantasy guy. I like looking at, points props and goals props. I think Ehlers on the second line maybe get benefit from some good matchups there. So I would throw a little on Ehlers to score tonight.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the other numbers. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele plus 180 to score. Moving down, as you mentioned, Nikolai Ehlers is there at 230. PLD at plus 265. Blake Wheeler as well. So, yeah, plenty of options if you want to get into that at CoolBet. You mentioned how easy it was to deposit. I will say this, and this is from personal experience, and a number of people have asked me about the site. The best thing about CoolBet, in addition to the transparency, was just how easy it was to take money out. I got it in less than a day, straight into my bank account. It was a breeze compared to some of the other books that I've worked with before, so really appreciated that. A couple other interesting matchups tonight. You got Florida in Columbus. Florida, road favorite at minus 130. Columbus kind of falling into a bit of a slump lately. Cold stretches for our old friends Jack Rossovic and Patrick Laine. Blue Jackets are at plus 110. And a straight pick'em tonight between the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders at minus 109 on either side of things. Buffalo, not surprisingly, a huge underdog in Philly. Philly laying 244 to win 100. Buffalo plus 200. So that'll return 300 if you bet 100 on the Buffalo Sabres tonight. Not that I think a lot of people are going to be doing that. And we were speaking with Frank about the Chicago Blackhawks and the season that they have had, what Patrick Kane's doing right now. They are road dogs again, going up against the Dallas Stars. If you saw the Lock Shop earlier, that was Dusty's dog pound pick today. Blackhawks at plus 127 and Dallas minus 149. And in a rematch of last night's game, another game that is a straight pick'em, Vegas and the Minnesota Wild minus 109 on each side. So go to coolbet.com. You can check out all of the odds for the National Hockey League. And being hashtag curling guy, I've got to take a quick look at the odds for tonight in the Brier. Two games that I'm really interested in. Manitoba, Jason Gunlickson, huge wins so far over Brendan Bottcher and Mike McEwen. He's going to look to keep it going. Gunner is minus 189 favorite against New Brunswick. And I also like Bottcher. Big head-to-head matchup. Northern Ontario at 3-1. Alberta at 3-1, Jacobs at 2-2. I like Botcher to continue rolling after his loss to Gunner in the opening draw. So we've got Manitoba and Alberta. If we stick those together, you get plus 144 in a parlay. I think that'll be the curling pick for a little bit later on tonight. So a very busy show today, Reem. And, it's amazing how fun this is doing it in a non-traditional radio format, being able to roll for 25 minutes or half an hour with a guy like Frank Seravalli, getting in and out. But we do need to get out in a few minutes because, of course, we got to get these podcasts up. I want to commit to everyone that by 3 p.m., when everyone gets out of or starts to get out of work, for the folks that aren't able to join us here live on YouTube, they'll be able to load that thing up into the car and start driving with us home, just as they did back in the days when we were on the dial. But no traffic, no weather. I might drop the odd weather pop in, but and no long stretches of ads.
Yeah, we might have to start reading the weather. I know it's quite nice out there. You're not afraid you're going to die when you go outside. I am enjoying reading the chat. While you're doing this stuff with Frank, I'm, hopping in and out trying to answer people's questions. But a lot of people reminiscing about old Winnipeg restaurants, namely Chi-Chi's. You got any good Chi-Chi's?
Oh, fried ice cream. Fried ice cream at Chi-Chi's. Absolutely. The old Winnipeg Arena days, speaking of that, and anyone that was around, the Winnipeg Arena itself was, a special building, but it was right beside the mall. So, as a kid, we'd sort of start off either at Wendy's or in the food court and then sort of make our way down into the parking lot and then into the arena. But if you're of drinking age, it seemed like Chi-Chi's was the spot, and OB did their pregame shows there back then, very similar to what we did at Boston Pizza for the last 10 years over at City Place. And I remember as a kid going in there with my dad before a game and thinking it was so cool that that's where the guys that we listened to all the time were doing the program. And the other spot that I went to more, not before games, but while working for the Jets and then Moose at the old arena, was Fingers, which was sort of across the parking lot. They had incredible ribs, great wings, and shout out to the Z-Man, my old partner on the NFL Sunday Ticket Show. Z-Man was the big Fingers guy. He did some deal, and then he would try to trade in fantasy football trades. He would try to sweeten the pot to get a player he wanted with like a coupon for ribs or wings from Fingers. So it was certainly good. But Wendy's guy would go to Wendy's quite a bit after the games. But man, good memories of that old building on Maroons Road, all the incredible games in there, and we're getting some great memories from Winnipeg hockey players in the chat as well. Reem, let me ask you this. We kind of threw Terry Sawchuk out there, Jonathan Toews right at the top of the list. If you had to put down the best Winnipeg native in NHL history, who's the first name? I won't put this onto the spot because, there's a lot of players that are in, but, do you immediately think Toews? Do you immediately think the greatness in net of Sawchuk? Or is there somebody else that pops to mind?
Yeah, I think you got to say Toews. Sometimes you are so biased because it's so recent, but you look at the number of Stanley Cups, Olympic gold medal, World Juniors. He's been a top player, Conn Smythe champion. I don't know how you don't say him. I know Terry Sawchuk, he's a legend as well, but I have to go with.
Sad thing about Terry Sawchuk is his career ended a lot earlier than it probably should have. He had, some issues off the ice that, ended up with an untimely early death as well. But I just as a kid, I just remember growing up hearing stories about Winnipeg hockey greats, and to think that some guy had 103 shutouts in the National Hockey League was just, hard to wrap your head around. Obviously a different era, but definitely. Now, on Andrew Haleko, I'm so glad he brought this up. A big burger and beer at Fuddruckers, co-owned by Jim Kite, was a treat before games. I think there was actually 3 Jets that were involved in Fuddruckers. Kite was one of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave Ellett was one of them. And I think potentially maybe Arnie or Dale Hawerchuk involved in Fuddruckers as well. And there are still Fuddruckers elsewhere, not here in Winnipeg. But, you go to the States. I actually have had a Fuddruckers burger in the last 2 or 3 years just on a road trip. As a burger guy, like a Wimpy, I grew up as a kid, like, Wimpy from the Cardinals, just the comics, just eating burgers. That essentially is me. And that might explain a few things. man, the trips to Fuddruckers were absolutely the best. Really wish we had that spot around now. But some more funny ones again. That hot dog was dancing gay. Butch Goring, says Wayne Nolan. Butch, I mean, 4 Stanley Cups with those teams in New York. Pretty incredible group of players that he was with. I still think I'm leaning Taves as far as the player skater, and to me it kind of comes down to those two. But we've got plenty of her. Oh yeah, Adam Kuzian. Adam, thank you. Howard Chuck was owner of Fuddruckers. And it's still huge in the Texas Panhandle. Even to this day, if I'm driving somewhere in the States and I see a Fuddruckers sign, I get a little bit excited and see if there's any way I can probably make it happen and get in there.
I definitely have a lot of good memories of the Fuddruckers arcade going there, if I recall. And I think they had the burger bar as well. Just looking at NHL players from Winnipeg, career point totals. Andy Bathgate, number 1, 973. Jonathan Taves, number 2, 815. Mike Ridley, number 3, 758. So those are the top 3 in terms of all-time point scorers of Winnipeg NHL players. Thank you, quanthockey.com.
Andy Bathgate, that's interesting. And Mike Ridley, being a guy that went to U of M, my brother played at U of M. I worked for the U of M sports programs before popping over to TSN. Been very close with the Bison programs in the past. And the story of Mike Ridley and Stu Grimson, for that part, are just incredible. Guys going from CIS, what it was called at the time, university hockey in the early 80s, and not just making it to the NHL, but as you mentioned, I mean, Ridley putting up huge points. I mean, both the Rangers, the Capitals in his career. You love stories like that are a little bit of a different route than, just being a top 10 pick as an 18-year-old and going straight to the league.
Yeah, and a lot of great restaurants going on in the chat as well. But yeah, I remember, it's tough to go from college to the pros, but those are some of the guys who've done it. Us.
Maybe I have to hook up with those guys on the show at some point. We'll certainly have a lot of time to do that. That is just about enough for us today, because we want to get this up in the next half hour for all the podcast feeds. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Everyone in the chat, I can't believe how many people are joining us live on YouTube every day. It is just incredibly rewarding to have you all supporting the way you are. As Remis mentioned, if you can hit that like button, spread the word, let people know. Obviously, on all of our social media feeds, we've got the links for everything. And if you're watching on YouTube, whatever your favorite podcast feed, get in there on that and make sure you're subscribed. And if you are listening to the podcast, if you can go and rate the 5-star rating if possible, and review, just put a little blurb on us. That certainly helps us as well. Well, that's going to do it. Remo, on the way out, we've got Jets, Leafs tonight, the first of 3. I do have to say, I think that this is going to be a game that I think we'll find a lot out about the Winnipeg Jets. Not necessarily winning or losing, but can they continue to do complete 180s after tough games? Hopefully that's a yes. And how they measure up against the team that up until this point through the first half of the season has been clearly the top team in the North Division, despite a couple losses to the Vancouver Canucks coming into tonight's game.
Yeah, here's the thing. What kind of Jets team are we going to see? Are we going to see the one who, we know they've won a lot of their recent games, but against Montreal and one of those, I mean, they got to overtime. They were giving up so many shots, and you can't continue to play like that. But, they kind of bucked the trend with Hellbuck stealing games and, guys who can score, I don't want to say from anywhere on the ice, but Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers. I mean, these guys have awesome shots. So I don't know what we're going to see. I'm again expecting a competitive game. I'm expecting a lot of goals. I mean, you'd like to see that, but we'll see what happens. Leafs have had a couple days off. Jets a couple days off. I'm expecting rested teams, and we know what the lines are going to be as well. Same lineup as last game versus Montreal.
Tomorrow on the program, Remo and I will have all our thoughts from tonight's game, and Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press will join us to break down game number 1, look ahead to game number 2, as well as all the latest news and notes coming out of tonight's game. Again, Jets plus 152 on the money line, Leafs minus 182. You can check that out at coolbet.com. Use promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. We need to thank Not Auto Corp, Boston Pizza Winnipeg, Royal Sports, and the Nick and Nikki DQ Group for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk
Daily. That's going to do it for us, folks. Thank you again for listening. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the comments, the likes. We will do it again tomorrow at 1:00 p.m. Mike McIntyre talking Jets with us. Recap of game number 1 from the Leafs and getting ready for game number 2 on Thursday night. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. on the YouTube channel and again in your podcast feed tomorrow at 3 p.m. Enjoy the game tonight. Let's hope we might be able to get a little underdog winner on the visitors, and we'll talk about it tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night, everyone, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.